Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Mary Crowley for Now is the Time. I have an explosive interview with new breaking intel with Maria Zack. She's the chairman of Nations in Action, and she was the whistleblower that actually told about the election fraud that happened in Italy with Leonardo. She's going to give some breaking news today. But before we do that, today's program is sponsored by Mike Lindell and My Pillow. They're almost at the end of the Mega 2 sale. Let's roll that commercial, please.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, My Pillow mattresses and My Pillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
Yeah, so you go to mypillow.com and you put in my promo code Mary, M-E-R-I, right in the middle of America, and you'll get even a more substantial discount. Order today. It really does. The products are incredible. I've got many of them. I've got the pillows, the sheets, the mattress topper, the robes, the slippers. They've got everything. So anyway, mypillow.com, promo code Mary. So anyway, let's have Maria Zack come on. Maria, it's good to see you today. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I know that you're in Florida and there's some, they're working on the place around you. So if you hear any noise, everybody, it's only because there's some people with jackhammers working right outside of where she lives. But in the meantime, as they say, the show must go on. So Maria, some breaking news has happened over the last few weeks. What has changed? President Trump retweeted something. Why don't you share what's happened recently?
Yes, it was surprising to me, but I'm very grateful because of our great work at Nations in Action and the information that we had as the witness to the election fraud in 2020. He put out a message that somebody posted saying Maria Zack said, and went into a litany of how we identified Barack Obama stole the pallets of cash off the Iran deal. Money flowed through Dubai into Italy and was used, from what we were told, for payments to the former prime ministers in Italy to go along with rigging the election. And then the money went into the Bank of Merrill Lynch in Geneva, Switzerland. I believe President Trump retweeting that absolutely validates it. And he is saying he knows back to us, and we're grateful for that.
Well, now with the primaries, some of the states have already had their primaries. I know where I live in California, the primaries are next week on June 2nd. How do you think this is affecting the elections? I know President Trump, one of his main platforms is going to be going back to same-day voting, paper ballots, and trying to clear that up and clean that up. When they invaded Venezuela, there was a lot of this was also coming out of Venezuela too, wasn't it, Maria?
So I was told about Venezuela very early on. Yes, that is my work. We were first to talk about all of this international rigging in a way that included China. And in the tweet by President Trump, he includes China because we identified China. And I don't want to give too much emphasis to Venezuela. I think a lot of people think, oh, that's it, Venezuela, Venezuela. It's far more complex than that. And it's a criminal syndicate that operates globally. They've stolen many countries' presidencies. I get to work with a lot of those candidates that knew their election was being stolen, from President Bolsonaro of Brazil. He knew, and his military was trying to stop the election fraud from happening in the cyber attack. And even it was so complicated and complex that even his own military couldn't stop it. which tells you it's above just some podunk country like Venezuela or something small. It was a criminal syndicate that had assets tied to our CIA, and certainly the use of satellites to invade the machines, and then to have the machines have over 35 back doors, which why would you want any back door into any computer? But both ES&S and Dominion, according to 2 reports that were used in court proceedings here in America, validated those back doors.
Well, in fact, in regard to Bolsonaro, I'm going to be at the Ahern Hotel in a few weeks. 107 is having an event, and Jim Caviezel's got a new movie that he plays Bolsonaro in this film that's coming out that they're going to be screening, excuse me, at this event. Bolsonaro's in jail right now, and they actually threw him in jail for contesting the election. Do you know anything about that, Maria?
Yes, and I had the pleasure of meeting with his son as well, and it's a pattern that they have. The criminal syndicate, and especially Lula, as they call him, Lula the rat of Brazil, was very integrally involved in making sure that they could suppress any naysayers, just like what they did here in America of, going after me. They deplatformed me, they debanked me, JP Morgan Chase, PayPal, everything you can imagine under the sun. They had me on Rachel Maddow on the cover of Washington Post just to slit my 42-year career of excellence into acting like I was someone who was a crazy person. And they have to denounce you. They have to stop you at whatever it takes. And President Bolsonaro is very well loved. His actions as president were what the people wanted. And so the ability to silence him, they knew that had to be part of the plan. And the only thing they could do is either kill him, which they tried, or jail him, which they did.
Well, his son is going to be at that event too, at the Ahern Hotel. Eduardo, I think that's the name of his son. But anyway, you had a high-level whistleblower that was part at one time of the cabal, right? That was giving you much of this information. Can you explain a little bit about this gentleman and how you connected with him a few years ago?
Yeah, we actually had many sources, and I gave President Trump what looked like a spider web of all these people that were involved, how they were involved in and interrelated. And certainly some people came to me unwillingly, but some came willingly to give evidence because they knew that this was a critical time, not just in America, but for the world. And if they were successful in taking down President Trump, the country's trajectory and the world's trajectory was in a fast nosedive. So we had to move fast. And some of these people, one in particular who gave me information, described the criminal syndicate. And I started to realize that other information I had, other experiences I had, I was in the room with some of the very people that other people were providing me their names. Some of them were intelligence services that saw it in foreign countries, and they were supplying evidence. So I was able to kind of pit each other against each other to see who was telling the truth, where the pieces fit. And in our 6-year journey in this investigation, I would say we have the best, sadly, database now of key bullet points on how this happened, how the criminal syndicate has lasted for decades, how they've grown in power and strength across not just America, but using Americans' assets, which is why we gave Elon Musk the program out of the Good Governance Guarantee, because that program would have prevented the theft of the election. It would have prevented the USAID money that was going abroad for all different things, from opening the border and bringing in all the illegals. All those actions that took place were so criminal, but it's so disheartening that they're stealing Americans' money to go invade America, to diminish our electoral process and certainly our constitutional rights.
Well, and even as many of you have been hearing this background noise, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's jackhammers, and they're the building that Maria and her husband live in West Palm Beach. It's like the enemy is trying to distract us right now. And I think it's good symbolism that we have to stay focused, not to look at the noise, not to look at all the distractions, because whenever something big is coming up, they distract us with some news thing or something over there that you'll get to look the other way and think, oh, let's not look at what's really happening. And so what we need to do is keep our eyes focused. I just got back, Maria, from Washington, D.C. I was there for the rededication of America on May 17th. I was there in front of the Supreme Courts interviewing attorney Ellen Parker, who was actually representing both Roe and Doe in the Roe versus Wade case. Of course, abortion was overturned. It went back to the state. But there's a number of people in Washington, D.C. that are standing and praying and obeying. And I believe we're going to see our nation turn back to God, that we're going to see a great turnaround. But we're in the battle in the middle of the fight right now. Now, Maria, you're going to be, you're supposed to be testifying in Italy. Are you going to Italy, or what's going on with your case that the Italian government has really, haven't they indicted you?
So basically, it's under Roman court rules. I was sued by the country of Italy. But prior to that, I was told that I was sued by Leonardo, the eighth largest defense contracting firm in the world, for trying to do stock manipulation by coming out with the evidence we were provided. That lawsuit from Leonardo was dismissed because their stock value actually went up. What is fascinating is the Italian court process. I've never been through one, and certainly I don't like having the legal bills, but I'm able to get more research and intelligence out of it. That court case, as God works, it was just such a miracle. I went to testify, and the judge had an interpreter there for me, and I don't speak Italian. Everyone tries to make it like I'm, big in Italy. I don't speak Italian. I had this interpreter that couldn't even get through the first 3 sentences of my English. So the judge canceled the hearing, and
Did you actually go to Italy, or was this on Zoom?
Zoom. I will not step foot in Italy until this is over and until they arrest the culprits. So I asked permission to submit a video. That video can now be found on X under Maria Zack, Maria S. Zack also. And that is me, Maria Zack. And that video, every American should watch, because it's pretty incredible to understand how our elections are stolen. There's a lot of misinformation. The bad guys want you to believe other people are heroes, and other people listen to these talking heads. They've got people all over the place saying things, and I'm looking at them and going, what are you saying? Like, show me your proof, show me your evidence. So that duping of Americans has been going on for 6 years and then some, because they had to get us into this lukewarm water of, oh, everything's fine, it's going to be good. And then they come in for the kill with the 2020 election. And they had to do it in 2020. And they had to take down President Trump, which was tragic. So now I look back, and I had key decisions, Mary, to make. And one of them was if my life was already in jeopardy. But what everyone didn't know is that I am the FBI witness to the theft of the election in 2020. There was an FBI investigation. I reported that in my testimony to the Italian court. And so I didn't want to ever lie, but I couldn't withhold that information any further, even though the FBI agents said if I ever tell people that I am the FBI witness, that they will come and kill me. And I believe in God, and I believe it's his timing, and whatever happens to me, I'm going to still try to honor him and do what's right and best. And there's no book written for where we are in America at this time. As everybody can see, our systems are down. The politicians are gone. They're not obeying the Constitution. They've been reckless in spending for decades. They keep their mouth shut about the corruption. And they're trying, some of them are in on it, and some of them are trying to survive in it and still try to do good. So for Americans, it's hard to know how to vote. And I can see it. So it's easier for someone like me more seasoned in campaigns and having run presidentials. But the most shocking thing for me is I'm still suppressed, Mary. And I posted that video and I think I've had like 100 views. So it's like, woo, yeah. So they are doing everything to shut me down.
Well, and I've done many interviews over the last, several years, and I've been doing content creation for 20 years, on different platforms globally. And then about 5 years ago, God said, "I want you to change your platform," and He showed me two faces side by side. I didn't know how to do a podcast. I was at January 6th. My friend Anna Kate, who was on Survivor and a major podcaster, told me and showed me what to order, the Yeti mic and this and that. So it was a big learning curve. But as I started interviewing people and started realizing in particular what I've been doing about the trafficking of children, as I interviewed different ones like James Rothstein, the detective out of New York in the mid 60s till the 80s, he told me, he said, "Mary, 90% of Congress and the Senate is compromised." And this is what happens is they get them in some situation where they have dirt on them. That's what the Epstein Island, you look at P. Diddy, you look at all these different ones that they get dirt on them, or they somehow blackmail them through situations that they weren't aware of, like their drink is drugged at a party, things like that. And so they have dirt on these people. And that's how they're able to control them. And that's why the Epstein files were so important. But even that is being suppressed. And now Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is stepping down. What do you feel about this whole thing with Tulsi Gabbard and this whole Epstein file case?
Well, I would say Madison Cawthorn, who was in Congress, helped tell us the story of how they drugged them, blackmailed them, that he was victim of it. You then had Tim Burchett come out and say, yes, it's all true what Madison said. So now that you have congressmen validating it, I would say also, it's not always that the congressman or the elected official did something wrong. It's that there's a gun to the head of their spouse and their children. And Brian Kemp's daughter's boyfriend gets blown up in a car. So, I've known Brian Kemp for decades. And if you ever told me he'd be where he's at today and viewed the way he's viewed, I would have been like shocked. And I am still shocked because I never saw him do illegal things. Doesn't mean he did or didn't, but certainly with that event, I think that was a watershed moment for Brian. And I did go to Brian. This is newsflash. I didn't know who to go to when I first.
Well, and say for the people, Brian Kemp's the governor of Georgia.
Yes.
And you actually came out of Georgia. You actually helped run Newt Gingrich's presidential campaign, and you were very involved in Georgia. And explain for the record, because a lot of people might not know. Because a lot of this stolen election, a lot of it, remember, was in Georgia, where you saw the suitcases come out, when the water leak. Why don't you go into a little detail on that, and then how the fiance, right, of his daughter got blown up in a car? Go into a little bit just for the story.
Yeah, I've had extensive time both in Georgia and Florida politics and nationally, very involved in the Republican Party. So I've known presidential candidates for decades, and in running political campaigns, as well as being in the government affairs side, I had both sides of the political spectrum of understanding how, one, we do elections, and two, how we do policy, and where the failings started happening and why I was running into roadblocks and why bad things were happening. So in 2020, in the lead up, I knew things weren't right. And when I've run for office, I knew the election results, things weren't right. Susie Voiles and Barbara Hartman in Fulton County, along with Marlene Welch, are three American heroes for what they did in exposing what Fulton County was up to. And the ballots, as they were counting them, Barbara was telling me, and I was trying to advise them and help them. She was telling me how she had stacks of duplicated ballots, the same markings. If there was a stray pen mark, was identical on ballot after ballot. There were just stacks and stacks. And so they knew it was wrong. Those are now sealed boxes with their signature. If the FBI doesn't reach out to them and have them validate them, they're missing out on key intelligence and proof of what was inside that box if they were tampered with after the poll watchers and counters went through everything. I'm thrilled that they secured all the data. I've known Rob Pitts for years and years, and there are things that are grossly wrong. And I will tell you, I believe everyone in this election fraud mess that's been involved should all receive polygraphs. Psychological polygraphs, I'll go first. I believe we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard to ensure that we get America back on track in the right way. And the Fulton County mess, I believe you're going to see massive arrests. And if I were in Fulton County and knew things, I would say things. So they say when you see something, say something. If you're hiding evidence, you're just as guilty, and you're guilty before God, which should scare you more than before a court.
Well, going back to Brian Kemp, so as governor of Georgia, so what happened? His son-in-law was in a car and driving, and what happened? The car blew up?
So it wasn't his son-in-law, it was his daughter's boyfriend. And yes, there were mentions that they were about to get engaged. And it was just before Christmas. There was a big rally for the runoff of the U.S. Senate seat. This young man was Kelly Loeffler's assistant. So here he works for a United States senator, and he's driving over to Savannah, and the car engine blew out of the vehicle. So when you think about what would it take to get an engine to blow out, I happen to have been with the command sergeant major that day in hiding, and that I showed him the pictures, and I had a CIA guy with me, and I said, "What do you guys make of this?" And they said, "That's not right. That's what we see in Kabul in Afghanistan. That's not what you see in America." So definitely, it was a message. There's more to that, and it needs to be investigated with polygraphs. And the FBI, unfortunately, seems to be so broken, and that Kash Patel still has not reopened and given me back my agents. That will be the litmus test of how we know if Kash has fallen or Kash has cowered. And either answer is wrong, and he needs to reinstate the Italy case because it relates to Atlanta, to all across America, because the machines being rigged, they had those back doors. Georgia had been online. And I can tell you there's a lot more evidence. I don't want to say too much to spoil the investigations, but those people who have a chance to come clean and not do jail time, now's your time, because your window's closing.
Well, we just have to continue to stand up, for justice. I know that I met Maria, I think in 2021. We actually went and heard President Trump in Arizona. Lee Valentine got us on the front row. And then Maria invited me to come and speak at the Georgia Tech Conference Center for her Nations in Action, where I actually spoke about my film that I was coming out with called Freedom Cry, about sex trafficking in America. And that morning, Maria, as you remember, you had asked me to pray. And we just had a short little service that Sunday morning, which you had me lead. And I remember after we prayed, we all turned to the Georgia Guidestones, because remember, the cabal put these Guidestones up in Georgia, and it was kind of the 10, commandments of the cabal. And one of them is that the world's population would never be greater than 500 million. And so right now there's 8 billion people on the planet. That means over 7 billion people would somehow be annihilated. So when we turned to the Guidestones, and remember, it was George W. Bush's 76th birthday, when 3 days later, after we prayed, those Guidestones came down. Now, I'm not just saying it's because of what we did, but I think it was symbolic about that those stones came down. And whether it was some type of drone, whether it was the hand of God through a lightning strike, because there was lightning and things going on. Was that July 3rd, Maria, that we were at your event that day?
Yes, and through the 4th. And we had planned that trip to go up, and it was quite miraculous for the power of your prayer and all of us wanting the Guidestones gone, and they were. And I asked someone, whatever happened to the investigation by the GBI? They said, we don't know. I said, oh, curious. It just disappeared like many other things.
Well, I know Sheila Holm, who she's come to several of my Open the Heavens event. We just did our last event on May 8th and 9th in Las Vegas at the Ahern Hotel, and we're planning on the 9th one coming up in September or October in the heartland of America. We're looking at Branson, Missouri. But let me tell you this, Maria helped me put on an event and screen my film called Freedom Cry at the Governor's Gun Club in, Kennesaw, Georgia, which is a suburb of, Atlanta. And I remember there was so much warfare over that event. I had a sponsor, so it was free. We just had an Eventbrite. People could just register for free. And so whoever these people are, they kept on overloading Eventbrite, so it looked like it was sold out. Remember, Maria? And then it just kept, we had 500 seats that we could have, had people come in for free, but it kept on being sabotaged. And when we had the event that day, there was maybe 100 something. But when I showed my film, we actually showed a little clip of Steve Peters' film, These Little Ones, which had Nancy Schaefer, who was this state senator from Georgia, who started exposing CPS and was starting to dig into things. But remember, they said her husband, Bruce, I think they'd been married 50 years. I'll have you talk about this in a minute. Basically, the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, tried to say her husband, Bruce, killed his wife, and then killed himself. But interestingly enough, that night we screened my film in the next room, Maria, they were doing the Christmas party. The GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, was right next door to where I was showing my film and talking about Nancy Schaefer. You knew Nancy Schaefer and her husband, Bruce. Elaborate a little bit on Nancy and, some of the corruption with that.
Sure. The amazing work by Nancy. She knew she was seeing missing children out of Georgia DFACS, the Department of Family and Children's Services. She was so devout to Christ. She was not going to turn a blind eye and let our children be harmed. So she started investigating it. And it was horrifying what happened, Mary, that, she was in the state Senate. She ran for lieutenant governor. She knew she had to get more power in order to have the ability to expose what was happening, because people were stopping her. People made fun of her. People didn't believe her. But then there were the people who knew she was coming for them. And up in the North Georgia mountains, there's a lot of camaraderie and kinfolk. It's like they know what's going on, and they'll behind the scenes tell you so-and-so is doing this and this. So she had a district up north that was full of God-fearing people who were willing to tell the truth. That night, when you showed the film, and the irony of having the GBI next door and there was a gentleman who came and approached me that night that he had evidence of what was going on inside the GBI and specific to the trafficking. And it was a little scary because he got in the car behind me, and I'm like telling my friend, why is your door not locked? It was cold, so he just wanted a warm place to sit while he's telling me some of these horrific stories of what was going on in Georgia. She sacrificed her life, and I got word not long after about who ordered her hit. And when I approached people in Georgia and said, why was that case not reopened? And of course, everyone's like, what case? It was solved. And that's the problem. Chris Carr, the Attorney General, needs a polygraph. Why did he keep it closed? Why didn't others open it? There were too many people involved that I believe people would come clean if polygraphs and certainly affidavits in government, which is the good governance guarantee design, was for the ability to have audits, affidavits, and transparency, so we can never get in this mess again, because those affidavits are at every pay period of every government official. And it's yes or no. Did you see illegal or suspicious activity or no? And then it's handled by a tri-level law enforcement, because the police that showed up in Nancy's area were local police, but they also had state GBI. So who was shut down? Where did the fingerprints go? Who had control of each of the pieces of evidence, the letter that supposedly was written, and the kids knew there was no way. Their children knew there was no way. And I was very thrilled when I got one of my sources gave me the information on who ordered the hit and how it went down. And I was able to relay that message back to Nancy's best friends so they could tell the children what really happened.
Well, in fact, when I was showing the film Freedom Cry, and before we actually had a little clip of the film, these little ones that actually had a clip, a soundbite of Nancy Schaefer speaking. We honored her that night, and there were several in the room, Marlene Welch and different ones, Susie Voiles, and ones that you talked about earlier that were in that room. They knew, you know, both of them, and they knew that there's no way her husband would ever kill her. How did they say it went down, that her husband killed her and then took the gun on himself? Is that what the ruling was?
That's what they say. And I was told it was a shotgun, and it's pretty hard to shoot yourself with a shotgun. So I'm not sure what happened in that room, but I am sure polygraphs are necessary. So it's horrific. But when I received a call about election fraud tied to human trafficking, and how that then triggered back to a Georgia senator who went out investigating the missing children in Georgia, it all intertwined. And she had flown out a month prior into Arizona. Everything keeps going back to Arizona, if you notice, and the election fraud. And I was told specifically the hit was ordered from someone in Arizona, and that the children and leverage against the politicians. And in this case, I was told it was the governor of Arizona, that this guy had evidence that his family member was blackmailing the governor, is what was told to me. So validating that must happen through the FBI. At Nations in Action, we have a responsibility to see something, say something. We do our investigations, but at some point, it is not my job to validate. It is my job to collect as much evidence as I can and supply it to the authorities, which is exactly what we did. And we have given a plethora of information. And now for Kash Patel and honestly, President Trump, you have had a year and a half. The clock is ticking. Your term limit is almost up, Mr. President. And where is the FBI? Where are my agents? We should not be sitting here as American citizens being responsible for doing investigations that require fraud and corruption of law enforcement. And certainly the CIA's involvement in the United States election fraud is a big piece of this. So President Trump's tweet is great, but yet it then painted a target on my back because I still don't have my agents back to complete the mission. And we're going to keep putting videos out, Mary, because we feel very called by God to do this. And I've been talking to many people that it's my responsibility, that this is not partisan. This isn't about me picking on a politician. They're all, in a way, culprits and complicit because they didn't put the underpinnings in. And, you know, it's our 250, right, anniversary. This is my sixth great grandfather. He penned the Declaration of Independence, and he had warnings that we were not doing enough in the founding fathers' documents. And the good governance guarantee is the piece of the next steps that should have been implemented then. He wanted things to be ironclad, that the corruption and destruction could not happen within the documentation. So as he drafted Pennsylvania's Constitution and founded the University of Pennsylvania with Benjamin Franklin, he was seen as the radical. And, you know, I've been called that, a radical. Well, yes, if you want to call it radical to have honest, good governance, sign me up. And his passion, his blood runs through my veins. I'm not going to stop. My team isn't going to stop at Nations in Action. We have to do this for humanity and certainly for our legacy with our children.
Well, Maria, you know, I just flew back from Washington, D.C., as I mentioned, on Memorial Day. And I flew out into Philadelphia on May 14th, I was literally there for 12 days. And I've been to Philadelphia several times, but we went into, where the Liberty Bell was, and, Declaration Hall, Independence Hall is under construction right now, but we were outside of, the hall where they actually signed the Declaration of Independence. And I went and got this key that was in Carpenter's Hall where the First Continental Congress met. It was very historic. And, this film just came out, A Great Awakening, that just was at the movie theaters. I would tell all of you, if you can, watch it, because we're at the time in history that it's really we, the people, that we need to stand up. And when President Trump actually called the people to Washington, D.C., to really rededicate America back to God on May 17th, that's what we did. There was probably 40,000 there. I think there should have been way more. But, a number of us heard, excuse me, a number of us went and we prayed. We bowed our knees. President Trump had a video message, but Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, was there, and Pete Hegseth. There was so many that spoke. And, 250 years ago, May 17th, that's when many of the founding fathers had called the nation to prayer. We are at that time in history that we need to speak up. Even on May 2nd, 2020, Maria, of course, I live in California. We were the first state that shut down. We know the corruption with the governor here, Gavin Newsom. We know that he was recalled. But once again, unless we can get the election, it's more been a selection. So we need to stay the course. But I woke up that day, Maria, and I heard the voice of God say these words: we won't shut up until you open the heavens. So we've been doing these events around the country called Open the Heavens. So as we close out today, Maria, what can you tell people? Just closing thoughts. And I know on the screen, where can people reach out to you if they want to interview you, if they want to send an email? Where's the best place for people to get in touch with you at? Maria, I think you're on mute.
My apologies. The best thing people can do is go to goodgovernanceguarantee.com. You can contact me through that. You can sign up to be one of the guardians for bringing back America. If you don't know who to vote for, because you don't anymore, your friends you can't trust that we have elected from school board all the way up, you will only know through the litmus test of the Good Governance Guarantee if they will sign the pledge and enact the pledge, the audit, the affidavit, and transparency. Then you know they're clean. If they won't sign it, they're not. And they're cowards, and they should be removed because you pay them. They receive money for serving. And that is a huge problem when they're paid to do their job and they refuse to do their job, and giving us transparency on what they've been doing to us. If we actually enact the Good Governance Guarantee, Mary, we can end property tax. And I've already built the formula. I've got the savings now that Elon Musk helped with Doge of getting our audit partially in. It was a two-prong approach, constitutional and fiscal. So Doge is only one part. And we're building that algorithm. I hope people will help fund us so we can build that algorithm, get it out to all the school boards on up. And that way we can save your money, let you finally own your home, and restore trust in government.
Well, thank you, Maria, for coming on. Thank you for watching. Now is the time. Go to Maria's site, goodgovernance.com. You see on the website. And also, go to my website as well, marycrowley.com. You're going to see the upcoming events that we're going to be doing. You can watch some of my shows, and we have a Hollywood Zoom call every Wednesday. We get voices around the country that are speaking for truth and sharing forth their stories of how they've overcome. For it says in the Word of God, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony, our story. And Maria is truly, I believe, a hero because she was one of the first ones that really alerted what was going on. And she's been involved for years with Nations in Action, governance, and even helping with presidential campaigns. And I trust her. She's a friend of mine. And I believe we need to continue to pray for Maria and Steve, Zack. So thanks for watching. Please hit the like button. Please make comments. It does help the algorithms. Please follow or subscribe. And please get this out to as many people as you can. There is a real thing of shadow banning and doing all this stuff. It's happened to me, even just talking about what's happening with the children. So thanks for watching. The best is yet to come, just like the founding fathers. They knew at the time of the American Revolution that if they didn't take action, if they didn't move forward and fast, that, the nation would go down. And because they were willing to put their lives, I feel God's heart right now, because they were willing to put their lives on the line, even as Maria's, relative that helped, was one of the signers on the Declaration of Independence. We not have to be afraid of making our voice be heard. Oh, well, I don't want to speak because I could be deplatformed. You know what? We have to be willing to go all the way. So thank you for going all the way with us. Even if there's just a remnant, it doesn't take many to change the nation and the culture. It says, if my people called by my name will humble themselves, pray, seek God's face, but lastly, turn from our wicked ways, then God says, I will hear from heaven and heal your land. I believe that we are going to see a great awakening for a great reformation. And as we come up to the 250-year anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, I believe we're at a tipping point that something big is getting ready to go down. So God bless you all. Thank you, Maria. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you soon. God bless.
God bless.